Why are you writing what I'm going to say? I'm not going to say, hey. What's good, everybody? Angela. Hey. I'm not going to say
That's
that.
That's not what it was. You're reading notes out of context.
As you know, we're back. Yay. I'm not going to say that.
Why are you reading that? Stop it.
What am I supposed to be reading? Back from break. Use 20. Yeah. It's 2019, everybody. The year is almost up, and we really, really, really need your help. You might wonder why. What could I do? I don't know how to record. I don't have access to the studio. You know what you do have access to? The green stuff. The Benjamins, baby. We need your cash. And it's not because we're broke. It's because we spend a lot of money keeping this show gorgeous and sexy. And we need you to put on something tight and help us keep it that way. All right, okay. I don't know what I'm going to say.
What's good, everybody? Steve Discourse here. And listen, if you've liked anything that we've been doing and you appreciate it, we would love for you to just break us off a little bit, throw us some support, because we do need help with some money for online web hosting fees and for, editing and recording and producing these episodes. However much you can, $1, $5, $10, $20, anything you want. We really appreciate that.
You can send us donations through our Cash App at WTD Pod. You can also Venmo us at WTD Pod. If you would like to send us monthly payments, which we would be ever so grateful, hit us up on Patreon at patreon.com/whatsthedeal. Thanks so much. Yeah.
Do you know if that type of gesture is something that would be important and resonate to your brother's personality? Or would he be like...
This could become a full-blown counseling session, but it's only because
We can change formats on the podcast. Yeah, it's been so long, no one will remember. We can come back right now with a relationship podcast, and people will think that's what they were subscribed to from last year. They won't know. What's the deal?
What's the deal?
What's the deal?
What's the deal?
What's the deal? Yo, what's the deal?
What's the deal?
What's the deal?
Hey, what's the deal?
Hey everybody, what's good? I'm Steve Discourse.
What up? It's your girl Jay Callie.
Back, yes, back.
Back again with
another
one.
episode of What's the Deal. It's been a crazy summer for us. We don't have to get too into it, but suffice to say, we've been both super busy the last few months. I'm exhausted even now.
When you say we've been super busy, it implies that we are not still super busy, which we are, but we love the people so much. We are back and we are better.
You're right about that. For real though, yeah, actually, we get so much good feedback from you guys, and even though the podcast is growing, we do get a lot of support, so that's awesome. And that is literally a reason why we wanted to get back to it. We love doing the show, but once we hit that critical part and we took a break, it was hard to take those breaks out of our time because we are busy, but we do get a lot of great feedback. So it's awesome. Even around DC, I might be walking around somewhere. And actually last weekend, I was out for a birthday party in Silver Spring, downtown. Mm-hmm. The guy running security recognized me from Instagram. And he says, "I love your podcast."
No way.
I was like, shit.
He was a security
yes.
guard?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that was really cool.
I'm not famous like that. I don't get recognized out on the streets.
Yeah, but that's because you haven't had viral Instagram videos like me.
That's also true.
But yeah, no, that was really cool. So we do get, support, whether it's friends or family reaching out saying, "Hey, I haven't got an update lately. Are you guys still doing the show?" Or whether it's, on Instagram or wherever it is. So we appreciate that. This is going to be a little bit of we're going to stretch. We're going to warm up today. You know what I mean?
I wish they could see me. I'm stretching and I look great. That was rude. Don't laugh at me. I do look great.
I waited for you to laugh. I didn't laugh. I laughed with you.
I laughed because I saw you struggling to hold your laughter in. It was polite that you waited, but
okay.
We saw the truth on your face.
And I do say it's going to be a warm-up, honestly, because I want to be able to talk about the impeachment stuff and Ukraine and this whole scandal with Trump.
Yeah.
But it is so freaking complicated. We curse on this podcast. Why did I say freaking?
Because we don't curse on this podcast
not early anyway.
The F-bomb? Come on.
We got to get worked up into it. Yeah.
Just say we
So
wanna stretch our
it's,
way in.
but it's so complicated, and like, if you're not paying attention to it, it seems like every couple of days now somebody that hangs out with Rudy Giuliani is getting arrested for being shady.
Right.
And Rudy Giuliani is personal lawyer to the current president of the United States, Donald Trump. Still hard to say that. It's surprising after all his antics. No offense. So we're going to talk about that probably next week, so we can really make sure we're both up on all the details and everything. And honestly, we were talking about it, and it's really hard to know like where to go and what to say about it, because it is a thing that's ongoing. And so a lot of how you react is just going to be how you take any piece of information. So we really got to kind of sit and say, okay, what's the important information? What's worth us even getting into?
We really got to sift through it. Yeah, it's work, but we will come and hit you with it heavy next week.
Yeah. So instead, we do have a couple other stories we're going to talk about. Most recently in California, Governor Gavin Newsom signed a bill to limit rent increases, which is pretty dope.
That is dope. We're also going to get into some robot moderators. I wonder, who are you really talking to?
Does not
on
compute.
Social media. Is it a human being? Is it a robot? Is it AI? Who knows?
There's also been a lot of fallout from the conviction of police officer Amber Geiger in the murder of Botham Jean, which we did speak about many months ago when the initial murder happened. So we're going to update you on what's going on with that.
There is so much happening around that story. My head is literally spinning. Also, there is a video of a Donald Trump massacre. Yes, you heard it right, folks. A Donald Trump massacre. Don't take my word for it. Listen to the rest of the episode for the truth.
That was good. See, now they're going to be waiting for the rest of the episode for this. That's how you got to do it. That's a good key of broadcasting right there. You got to tease them out. What's going to happen at the end? I
told y'all
Keep
I got
coming
better.
Back.
I got better.
Hey, we've been doing a lot this summer. Part of that was getting better.
Hey.
All right, so should we start with the rent control?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so how's your rent? Is that too personal?
Okay, my rent is my rent. We can start there.
Yeah.
I would like to not have to pay it myself. However, I do.
I'm seeing someone right now, so I can't help you with that.
Okay. It's a lot. I live in Washington, D.C. You assume how my rent is. It costs way more than what the place is worth, but it's a competitive market, so I pay it.
I'm just thinking if I had one of those keyboards here where I could cue up like sound effects and stuff. I know there's a Kanye Sky High little clip we could have. What's that song? Celebration?
If
that would have been great right there.
If you known that before, we could have queued it up ourselves and done it.
If we can get us a nice little production budget, I can take the time after the episode and plug in all those bells and whistles after the fact before we publish it. But okay, so that's what we're gonna do. That's Celebration, right? Yeah. All right.
What's going on with
so
this rent?
Anyway, rent too high for a lot of us. We're in DC. I've lived in cities pretty much all my adult life. Grew up in New Jersey, which is city-ish, even though it's suburban, I guess. And rent is crazy in every city I've lived in. Rent is crazy in a lot of cities. Rent is getting crazy for people in cities that are getting bigger. Right. I got a brother in a city in North Carolina. Saying a similar thing is happening. A little bit smaller scale, smaller city and everything. But he sees the way these things are changing. The developers are coming in just like they are in D.C. or Seattle, wherever you're at. So rent control is something that happens in a lot of other cities. But in California, they passed it statewide. Your rent can't increase more than 5% every year, which is modest.
Every year rent increase is still a lot. Like every year?
It seems like it, right. So, and it also attaches with an inflation. So whatever inflation is plus 5%. True that. So it could be more than that. But and there's also some rules in there to limit how you can get kicked out. Because what is happening for a lot of people around the country is you got a decent rent, and your landlord is going, man, I could be cashing in on this spot. So they kick you out, double the rent or whatever. So the law is basically you have to have a reason. And we're not going to get into all the details of that, but it can't just be like, all right, boom, get out so we can raise rents. And that's big because, a lot of people are struggling with rent. And I think traditional kind of models, people say, oh, you shouldn't spend more than like a quarter of your income on rent.
And now they
but for a lot of us,
oh my gosh,
that's impossible. Yeah. Like that's a fantasy in a lot of places in the country. Maybe not in some more rural areas. But that's because people are leaving those places. So a lot of rent might be going down in some of those places. But this is a big thing. I like it. There's a lot of criticism, because people think it'll stifle development. They try to address that. Any buildings that are 15 years or younger or newer won't apply to this. So because they want people to still build, right? Everybody says you can't make rent affordable for people because we'll stop building houses, and then there won't be any houses being built, and then there's still a housing crisis. Complicated issue, but I don't know. I'm in favor of it.
I have a lot of thoughts. A lot of them came as you were talking, but so number one, I know someone who was recently kicked out of their house so that the landlord could bring in new tenants and raise the rent. And there's always a loophole, because what this landlord did was sold the property to his own friend. So they're kind of in like this, I want to call it shady business. It's like, it's a finesse. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
So they've now really, really raised the rent on the homes. And my friend was like assed out. She had like a minimal amount of time to like collect everything, find a new place to go, and be gone. And it's not only does it cost a lot, but it's also really, really, really hard to find somewhere to go, because these cities are overpopulated. So once you get put out of your place, it's like, I'm couch surfing for a little while till something becomes available, especially something that's in my price range.
Right.
So all of that is just shady, crooked, but it definitely goes on. Also, just the whole notion of like raising the rent. I don't understand why the rent has to go up. Like, why is my salary doesn't have to go up? Your employer doesn't raise your salary. Even when you're supposed to get an annual raise, there's always some mumbo jumbo about why you can't get it this year. But that rent is going up. That's crazy.
Right. Well, and you're going to get back to something that's at the base of like all the opinions I have on anything political.
Yeah.
It comes back to that the price of everything naturally goes up because we just understand that's how the market works. But somehow the price of labor, of my time at work, never gets more expensive. Right. If you're a teacher, the things related to you teaching get more expensive. Services that the school subscribes to provide you to the kids, literally the books, right. Anything gets more expensive, and we take that for granted. But then when people say, hey, I'm broke, I can't afford to live, I need a rent, now it's a politically divisive kind of thing, right? And that's super crucial to me in a lot of these issues that we talk about.
This is totally sidelined. I remember your point because I don't want you to lose it, but chips cost $1.89. Like, because you're talking about inflation. Like, I know they were $1.69, and one day they were just $1.89. And I was like, yo, I just recently realized it. That's why when you said that, I was triggered. Like, chips cost $2 once they include tax, like one bag of chips. All right, I'm done. I'm
going to date myself because I remember chips when they were a quarter.
Steve.
I'm old. That's right.
I remember when they were $1.
True.
Even.
We haven't just established what size bag of chips we're talking about. We might be talking about two different size bags. I'm talking about the
standard, the one that you get at the counter in any store, the grocery store, the one that's right at the counter always.
Them little size. Medium size kind of. Exactly. Yeah, all right. So, but the other thing that you touched on about if you get evicted, it's not about, oh, there's an opening across the street or here or here. You don't know where you're going to end up because it's not easy to find. Even if there were vacancies, now those are probably ratcheted up just like the place that kicked you out. So suddenly, maybe you have a history in that place, right? Maybe you have friends in the neighborhood. Your kids maybe have gone to school in that area for a while. Next thing you know, you find yourself in another county,
right?
1, 2, 6, 10 miles away. Who knows? The point is that you in your entire life are secondary now to that person getting their money off of that property. And that's where I think the values are misaligned, right? Because like we got old folks get evicted, maybe the building changes hands and now somebody wants to knock down the building and build up some new stuff. This community now is gone. Everybody's got to disperse. And again, it's not like they can all say, well, there's 50 spots open in a building, down the street or something. No, we're all going who knows where, right?
Exactly.
And that's why stories like this are important, so we can then have this conversation, because it's not particularly relevant to our audience what happens in California. But then again, they say as California goes, so goes the country, because it's so big. It's the 5th largest economy in the world, I think.
California, the state?
Yeah, the state alone.
In the world?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So it's very influential in how the
very
rest of the country
expensive in
goes.
California,
Like
though.
with
It's,
with
insane.
like with car emissions regulations, California is stricter, and so what generally happens is most car companies just match that, rather than having a California version that their vehicles match, and then having looser emissions for the rest of the country. So like they set precedent a lot for how the rest of the country goes, and so it's important
scares me.
because I think a lot of our listeners get it. They're like their rent is not a secondary thing. Their rent is expensive right now. So
I know the purpose of this story isn't homelessness, but it so seamlessly ties into homelessness when we talk about how, okay, where do all these people go? Well, they're on the streets. You get what I'm saying? Some people are lucky enough to have friends and family or even find a new home. But there's a lot of those people who literally just move in on the bench in McPherson Square. You get what I'm saying? When I'm walking to class or when I'm walking up the street or getting and going wherever I got to get to, I'm like, these are the same faces, and I walk past you literally every day on that
Right.
same bench, and now I realize that bench is legit your home.
right.
Like, that's home base for you. You have your luggages, your blankets, your shoes, your da-da-da. And I saw one guy that I see every day walking up the street. He wasn't on his bench. And it was like a revelation, like, dang.
And that's one of the reasons they cited as being a real catalyst for signing this is over the last 2 years, homelessness in Oakland increased 43%.
That's disgusting.
Right. So you're saying
yet
you
they
got
wanna
X
lower the
amount.
rents.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, man, and that's an interesting thing because I think a long time ago, like growing up, I feel like when you think of homelessness or something, you see bums on the street, quote unquote, and things like that. And I think but in an older time, it was easier to say, that person's a bum because maybe they got their own personal issues, but they're doing something that they can't keep it together or something, right? And we would blame them individually for
Yes.
being on the street. They can't stop drinking, or they didn't do this, or they don't want to work or something. But right now, legitimately, we're creating communities of homeless people strictly because the rent is just too high. People are busting their ass.
And that's been the case in California because Skid Row has existed for how long?
Right.
It's just that it's more of a, I want to say global epidemic, but I know that I'm being dramatic.
Yeah.
But definitely across America, we're seeing more and more tent cities, more and more homeless communities. And I think that what the difference in the way that we understand it, like you said, we don't look at this individual, but we understand systems. I think that overall, as a nation, more and more people, and maybe this is social media and generating more conversations, but we understand that we're all a part of this same system, and we don't have these unique and individual experiences of like grief or of strife or of whatever. Even when you look at racism, where we would think it was all overt and like this man hates this man. No, it's a system. So like we understand systems better, and I think we need to attack it from that angle.
Absolutely. Speaking of systems, what kind of systems are we developing to combat online trolls
Wow.
and hate? I don't know. I'm laughing about that. I'll explain why I'm laughing about it. But okay, it's a serious issue.
Okay, so now when you log into the internet, you are having conversations back and forth with other human beings. Assumably, these human beings are your friends, or at least your internet friends, right? Now you may just be talking to a robot. In fact, let's just be real. You are definitely talking to robots for part of the day when you are on the internet. So a company called Intel has recently started, releasing these bots. And it sounds weird to say releasing because they're not actually robots, but they're like those robot comments that we always see, specifically to attack racism, to attack sexism, to attack discriminatory and hateful comments that people leave on the internet by saying, okay, we've always seen where someone might say something racist and be like, oh, my account got shut down for the day, or this post has been removed, and people in bots go in and scrub your page or scrub the net for these hateful comments. Now they said, how about we be a little bit more human? Right? Instead of just scrubbing human robots, instead of just scrubbing these comments, let's talk back to them and try to hit empathy. And they'll say, hey, I don't think it's productive to the conversation for you to just say these sexist things. But that is a robot that's trying to see how much more successful can we be in getting you to stop talking like a complete idiot if instead of just constantly shutting down your page, I say, yo, there are real people out here who read these things and it really has an impact on their life. Why don't you try to do something a little less horrible, right? These are the type of things that these robots might say to you or that they will say. And in some instances, they've seen the hate speech go down. In some instances, they've seen it go up, depending on, like, demographics. Like, which Abby did they use on the page? What was the race of the Abby? What was the Abby's name? Was it a man Abby for this bot commenter, or was it a woman? And these different demographics have had different effects on success.
They're tweaking it, right? They're still perfecting it.
Exactly.
And so the funny thing about that last point about them trying to figure out, like, the optimal setting or condition or whatever, I'm like, humans don't even know how to get other humans stop being shitty. No. You think one human can write a computer code to get a No, I don't. I think this whole idea as a solution is ridiculous and hilarious.
I agree.
I think it's cute and like naively optimistic, but also I'm thinking of like this is immense money and resources and time we're spending. And this is it? This is what we're doing?
That's what makes it silly. Because I don't think that what they're trying to do is stop internet racism or get people to stop. But I think that what they were looking for is something that will be more effective than just scrubbing those comments off of Facebook or just scrubbing those comments off Twitter. Like, what might be more effective in getting people to chill than just scrubbing it? Okay, maybe if someone says to them, this is hurtful, please stop. This isn't productive. Please stop. So I think we have to look at it more comparatively to that. But like you said, when you think about the resources that go into it, the amount of money that's been spent, like, is it really worth it just to have someone say, you know what, robot, f*** you? Because a lot of people are saying that.
I mean, I feel like
robots.
You gonna get really indignant. You like, I'm not taking this lip from no robot, first of all, and then I'm gonna keep being a bigot. Right. So now we gotta trick each other, and that's silly.
So wait, then there's this other company, and I mean, this is terrible research because I don't know the name of this company. They just kept saying this Twitter CEO spoke about the use of it, who said that they were going out of their way to create full profiles for these robots. So when you clicked on their page, you would really think it's a person. So they would put like, oh, I went to this high school, and this is how old I am, and these are all my friends and followers, to really make you think it's a person. But again, we used to have to be scared of predators on the internet. Now you have to be afraid that you are talking to a figment of your very own imagination. There's nobody attached to this. Just your computer, randomly clicking.
So the fact that not only can we give it like the right avatar picture and name, we got to create a whole background digital alias for this AI. No, this is ridiculous. First of all, now we're lying to people flat out, right? We're not just saying, let me just incept these ideas. Let's invent whole people instead of just saying, well, all right, let's skip the AI. If it takes real people to convince real people, then let's just work on real people.
We were just talking about systems and money.
Right.
They would rather spend the money on tech so they can sound cool and have talking points than to give people jobs.
Well, in tech scales, so if you can get this thing, it's easier to run this thing than it is to hire legions of people to police Facebook, which is what Facebook does. They pay people to moderate. And then back to the conversation we've had, I got a real problem with people moderating it as well. Because who are these people and what makes you think you know the right answer? Now, when you turn it into an algorithm, we have even less people responsible for getting an AI that can't fully comprehend the things the way that we can, now making decisions about it. The whole thing is just silly.
The whole thing is...
Do I sound super cynical and pessimistic here?
No, but I'm mad because when you were like, let's talk about these robot commenters and all this stuff, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. I thought you wanted me to look it up because you thought it was cool too. So I'm like, let me look up this new cool technology. And you're like, this is ridiculous. And I'm like, all right, I'm talking about this from the wrong angle. Clearly.
Depends. I know people who love it.
I don't think it's ridiculous. I think it's interesting. I don't have an opinion one way or the other. Do I think that it's useful? No. Do I like talking about it? Yes. That is as far as I can go.
It's good debate fodder, that's for sure.
All right, I think now would actually be a really good time to go ahead and take a break. We've been talking, we've been chatting, and we will be right back. While we're on this break, we want to remind you, do not forget to share the podcast. Share it to all of your social media platforms, your Facebook, your Instagram, Twitter. Don't forget to use the hashtag What'sTheDealPod whenever you share anything. And Like and subscribe the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, wherever you listen. Thanks for spreading the love. You know we appreciate you. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the bulk of what I really want to talk about. Actually, there's two things, but I feel like we have to touch on this Amber Guyger case. Not so much the case itself, because I feel like we know a lot of these details. We can refresh up on them, but there is so much fallout, like you said at the beginning of the episode. There's so much conspiracy, dare I say, surrounding a lot of these things and a lot of the backlash. Oh my God, I'm yelling. I'm getting a little worked up.
Let's bring it. Let's go.
There's a lot of backlash.
People don't tune in for,
this, and it's like, it's crazy. Yeah. You talk to me about what you know, and then I'm gonna talk to you about what I know.
All right. Well, so we talked about this murder when it happened, and the main update about that. I mean, not a lot of new information really came out for the trial, other than we found out a lot about her personal text message and her social media use, Officer Guyger, in that it was very violent and or at least a little bit racist. Depending on the comments you looked at, the memes she shared, a lot of memes about, Grim Reaper type stuff related to being a cop, right? Like she's here to hand out ass whoopings and death, and that's what she does, right? Like she's a very badass, which a lot of the memes were very contrary to what she tried to do on the stand about she panicked, she was so sorry, it was a mistake, this and that. And it's like, lady, all you talk about with your friends and text messages and stuff about Grim Reapers and loading up the clips, and this is what you stay calm under pressure to do. Hard to really believe. And then the testimony from the neighbors about how she seemed to really delay. She ignored any efforts to revive and save this man's life because she was more concerned with the fallout for herself.
Can we get into that?
Yeah. So that's basically the background. And the shocking thing is, she was found guilty of murder, which very, very rarely happens in police-involved shootings. So that's where we're at. She got 10 years. They're going to appeal, which was, no doubt predictable. Seems like practically, any court case anybody's involved in on either side of the law is going to appeal if they get found out. So, yeah, what do you want to add into this? There's a lot of developments since the verdict.
Okay, so number one, just because you said, like, her saying that she panicked and all this other stuff and blah, 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 and just tried to act quickly, because one of the things that I was going to update was the neighbor. So when this first happened, it's crazy because it was so long ago. When the video came out of her kind of going back and forth on the balcony, and she was like clearly like hysterical. She was putting her hands on her head and she was looking crazy. She was talking on the phone for like, and this is like a 7-8 minute long video. And the neighbor was like, okay, I don't know what she's up there doing, but she's kind of tripping right now because the emergency, police, rescue squad, fire truck, they haven't shown up, but she's just having like a phone conversation, and it doesn't seem like she's talking to the cops. When that video first came out, I don't think I understood the gravity of what was happening, so it was basically like a reaction to the fact that she was like, I felt so bad, I had to act quick, I had to do all these things that I could do to be, do her best. And she was like, well, I sat there and watched you have an 8-minute, I recorded 8 minutes worth of the conversation that you had with someone that was clearly not an emergency responder. And that was what, by the time I got my phone out, there had already been minutes since the gun's shot. So you left him laying on the floor. I didn't know why people kept saying she left him. I'm like, how do we know that? So I'm like, oh, that video was the incriminating piece of evidence that proved you called whoever. I keep saying it was her boyfriend. This is not a fact. This is just me. You called your boyfriend because she was on the phone with him before. And I'm like, she probably called him back like, oh, my God. Well, yeah, that's what da-da-da. Because that's just what makes logical sense to me. So that girl got fired from her job. And then people were like, you're a snitch. You reported her. You sent these videos to the news, and you're on your social media talking about what you saw, and you're creating all these big issues. And you know how the internet does. They called her job. They called her home. They harassed her. They demanded that she be fired. She got fired, and then she said, I'm going to the media because you're literally firing me for saying, hey, this girl is lying. And then her job literally blackballed her. She lost her credentials in the entire state. It's Texas, right? She lost her credentials in the entire state. She's not like qualified to work at all. Just from saying, this girl is lying. I have a 7-minute long video footage. So that's one major fallout that people are like, whoa. Of course, we've heard about Joshua Brown, who was one of the key witnesses in the case, who was the next door neighbor of Botham Jean, who was recently murdered. And there's a whole conspiracy that surrounds that as well. And there's a lot of people who were like, okay, this is open and closed. The police did this. He testified against a police officer. His testimony largely is part of the evidence that contribute to her being charged with murder.
Yeah, he was referred to as like a key testimony, right?
He was the key testimony. Like, you heard everything through the wall, right? And you know what happened. No one else really knows what happened but you. So new pieces of evidence to that story, which this is not at all me saying I don't think it was the police, because there's still so much to unpack with that, was that he was kind of, I don't want to say he was in hiding, but they were saying he was trying to keep a low profile because he was already afraid of gun violence. He was just shot in November of last year. It hasn't even been a year since he was shot by someone who people think is someone who he knows, because the person who shot him is still at large. And that shooting resulted in the death of his friend, which is why he moved in the first place. So then after Botham Jean was murdered, he was like, I don't want to stay here. This is high profile. There's a lot going on. It's a lot of attention. He moved away because he wanted to be disassociated from all of that. He adamantly did not want to testify. He refused to testify. Then he was subpoenaed to court and made to testify. And he was like, okay, well, I'm scared because I've been trying to lay low. I don't know who was after me before, but they might still be after me. And you're not only forcing me to testify, but it's an open court. And you're televising it? Or at least all this footage has been televised and it's all over social media. Everybody knows this man's name, where he lives, and then he shows up dead. So regardless of if the police pull the trigger or not, I still hold them partially responsible, or the system, shall we say, the law, the government, because you knew that he was trying to lay low and you could have done more to not have his name, face, testimony, a national spectacle. There's ways for you to gather that information from him without propelling him into the limelight when he says someone's after me. And then he's murdered 10 days later. So
Yeah, it's really sad. And it did look super suspicious right off the bat. It would have been sensational, of course, if the police assassinated him, and it would be really, really nuts. A lot of people would say, well, duh.
What I say.
Right. A lot of people would say, well, duh. But at the same time, no, that would have been nuts. So, yeah, it's sad. I mean, some people say, well, that's his own fault, because he brought it on himself. We don't know what he was into to bring that attention to himself in the first place.
We don't know,
and that might be fine.
I don't want to speak about the police. What if they
they've got 3 suspects. Did they have a third? I know they arrested 2 people.
Those are suspects, and they can still be a cover-up. So I don't want to speak as if we've cleared anyone from being a suspect. Sure. The police dictate who we now view as potential suspects. Everybody's a suspect until we know who did it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, some people, it's interesting just easily dismissing it and say, well, that's his life and his own fault.
Yeah.
And that might be true. The guy might be a terrible guy. He might have all types of wild stuff in his past, and he somehow brought this on himself one way or the other. And this is finally how it caught up to him. But I don't know that, and so it's not really my business. But I know the fact of the matter is, this guy had that concern on his plate for some reason. He testified to not save this guy's life, but to get some justice for Botham Jean. And as a result, this is the price he paid, right? Whether he was a bad person or deserved it or not is not up to any of us to decide, So that blood is still almost, in an indirect way, on Amber Guyger's hands as well.
It is.
Yeah.
It definitely is. And I know it's a lot of pressure for her, and I would hate to be in her position, but also, again, my empathy is dry. I don't have a lot of empathy for her because I mean, I'm sorry to say it. When I look at her, I'm just like, this lady is a fucking dumbass. And that's all I can see. I don't see someone who made a grave mistake. I don't see this hate-fueled murderer. I just see a dumbass who literally did a dumbass thing that was the ultimate mistake. It wasn't, oh, you dropped my glass of milk. It's not, don't cry over spilled milk. It's like you walked into someone's home and you murdered them and then you let them bleed out. And now you think that you can cry your way out of responsibility. And the thing that pisses me off is there are people who see her tears and instead of saying, this dumbass got herself into this position and now she's just going to cry her way through, they say, we need to hug and console and make her feel better because she's crying. I don't give a fuck if she's crying. Do you know how many times I've cried, or anybody else for that matter, for situations that I didn't put myself directly into? She put herself here. Go cry in your jail cell. I don't care. I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's just so much my mind literally can keep spinning. What do you have to say? Do you have any thoughts about all of this craziness?
The other fallout from this that we didn't talk about, we talked about the human cost of these two people who testified. Mm-hmm. The other fallout that was super scandalous was the way everybody involved treated Amber Guyger herself after the trial. And as far as the family, Botham Jean's brother and father were extremely forgiving, if I can make an understatement, I think.
Right.
We don't have to get into it. And the brother he's maybe 18, but we're going to say he's young. He's an adult, but he's young. So let him make those decisions. And I don't know, maybe he'll change his mind as he get older, or maybe not. But those were super extreme to me because they said things like, I don't even wish prison for you. I'd rather you just truly find, it in your heart and change. And I'm sorry, we can have forgiveness. You can have grace, but we still need justice and accountability because this isn't a personal transgression, right? This is more about the culture and the way that many people think police are trained and operate because, like you said, she walked into this situation.
Right.
She did not. If she thought someone was in her home, she could have stepped back out and waited in the hallway, called for backup, yada, 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 yelled at the guy, but she went straight in when she thought. And so this was completely a matter of the mind state of her, and I would argue the training of police in general. So I think all that forgiveness was a little wild, but that's up to them, so that's fine. The other thing is the bailiff, there was a video of her being very consoling of Amber Guyger and stroking her hair and things like that. And the judge, after the fact, came down and hugged Amber Guyger as well.
Right.
And I got now I got a real problem. I can disagree with the family. It's up to them on their individual, how they want to handle it. You're a judge, you're a bailiff. Your job is to be, you got a mechanical role here.
Right.
There's no feeling. You can't take sides. I don't care if you in your faith and your religious views hold the same belief as a family. This ain't your job to do that right now. It's absolutely not. And this judge, I'm gonna assume the judge doesn't have a history of doing this because otherwise it would have came up, right? It would have been reported, well, this is what she does to all the people because she's just such a merciful and graceful woman. I just sentenced you to jail, but I love you anyway or something. She doesn't. And that's totally inappropriate. I would say, okay, if she had a history of it, I'd say, well, I don't know about that, but if at least she does it all the time. But for this to be one outlying case, I think it doesn't help anybody who has mistrust of police or the criminal justice system in general. And I think that was wild. It was way out of line.
Not only did she hug her, she gave her a Bible. We have separation of church and state. And she was like, oh, I felt like it was appropriate because the case was closed. The case was over. You were still in that courtroom, girl. You were still on camera. Not only that,
in the robes.
Everything. And Amber is appealing the case. So if things do get changed, what you did can influence the secondary decisions. It's all absurd.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you really wanted to make sure it was separated and all done and deal, you mail her that Bible next week. Mail it to her jail cell with a letter and say, hey, this is how I feel. But you don't do that on the job.
It's just not your job at all.
So,
if you're that religious, you can just pray, God, touch this woman and let her see the light. and then you step back. It's not your job to personally deliver her salvation. You are a judge. Okay?
Yeah. So
Anyway.
look, we're in the home stretch. Last story, real quick. I don't know if this warrants a whole excavation, maneuver, but so there was a conference recently, sort of pro-Trump conference, and they played a video of it was a movie scene from Kingsman, the Secret Service. This movie came out recently, right? And it's like a massacre scene, and they put Trump's face and they put a bunch of his opponents on face, and Trump was just
Destroying them.
murdering everybody. And this includes, do we have the name? Who has the list of names? Do you have it?
One of the people was John McCain. Another person was Kathy Griffin. There were also several like journalism outlets like CBS I saw.
There were like logos.
Yeah, logos from other like news sources that report news, I guess, that Trump doesn't like. Things like that. Journalism. People who talk.
Yeah, and obviously it's super troubling.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of things are about the Trump administration, but at the very least, I mean, you can't have videos of the actual president imitating killing actual people, let alone elected officials on top of it.
Right.
This is not, I mean, there's no situation where this would be okay. You like this guy, you support him, so you think, you know what would be a good look? My president murdering everyone.
Right.
That's a good look. How unhinged do you have to be? What do you got to say about this, Jay Kelly?
Thing. It really looks horrible. No one wants to see imagery of anybody being massacred, especially inside of a church. Even in the movie Kingsman, I was like, all right. Even though the scene is kind of cool, it's not cool when it's real life. Like when that movie came out and when that scene first happened, it wasn't. I don't want to sound dumb because people have committed church bombings and church shootings all throughout history. But in recent history, I think that it's become more of a soft spot because it was like a string of churches, specifically black churches, that were attacked. And then people were like, we don't really want to play these games.
And then the synagogue.
Right. So to see that imagery now is different than the, few years ago when the movie Kingsman actually came out. That's number one.
That's a good take.
Number two, to see the president doing something like this, even though it is a meme and it's just superimposed faces, it's weird and awkward and it's just weird. But my actual perspective, I don't know if it's unexpected or not, is that is a huge double standard also, because it's the people who are outraged at the idea that this video could come out and that there are people who think that it's okay or think that it's funny are the same people who will laugh at videos of people fake killing Donald Trump, or saying that they want him to die, or having videos of them shooting him or kicking his ass or doing whatever. So if the president has to deal with several mock videos of his own murder being depicted and you think it's funny, but then when there's depictions of him committing murder, you can't hold that double standard. You either need to be outraged that people think that murder and massacre is funny, or you're not. You don't only get to be outraged when it's people who you like being murdered or massacred, especially Kathy Griffin. This is why I said, like, girl, shut up, because she was like, I was one of the people depicted as being murdered by the president, and people gave me strife, blah, blah. Kathy Griffin, you had a whole photo shoot holding the decapitated head of the president, and you thought it was the funniest thing on earth. And when he said something to you about it, you defended that. You cannot think that it's funny to decapitate the president, and it was not some faux, it was a very realistic looking president head that she was holding in this photo shoot. And even if it's, I don't know if it's supposed to be some sort of metaphor, I don't care. You don't get to be mad now that some fan superimposed your face. You actually just shut the fuck up. That's just everybody. It's horrible, but you laughed at it 2 weeks ago when you were on the other side of the joke. So shut the fuck up.
I'll give you that, yeah. Because there is, and even not in this specific situation, but I think, yeah, in the types of jokes we make, I think there's a legit double standard that happens, and his opponents justify it, and this is me and most of the people I tend to agree with politically and everything, is on our side, we do justify it because he is legitimately a terrible person. Right. So that's why, okay. But for then him, the video and the opposite, now for us to be all outraged, the honest thing to do will be to accept it. Yeah, this is a double standard here, and we should have been more sensitive and more careful about the way we were being critical in the past. So I'll agree with you on that. It's a hard one to take, but if we want to be honest, that's something we should own up to. Yeah. Okay. Damn, finishing up strong on the first episode back.
Not only are we finishing up strong, but we gave the people more than what we promised. Hello. Because it's been more than however long we said.
You know what? We swore we were going to be like, you know what? We're going to get these, knock them out quick and efficient, but to the point and sweet and what you need in like 30, 35 minutes. And we just blew right past that, didn't we?
We sure did. And that's okay because it's all authentic and it's all real. And I am going to take a nap. And that's called going to bed early because it's late.
Hey, that sounds good to me. So let's wrap it up, right? Yeah. I think that's it. We don't need to do anything extra. So with that said, I'm Steve Discourse.
It's your girl, Jay Callie.
That's the deal.
All right, people, thanks so much for tuning in another week to What's the Deal podcast.
You can follow us on social media at Steve Discourse
and at It's Jay Callie.
We got to send a huge shout out to my man Clifford Cartel for composing our theme music.
And wherever you listen to this, make sure you subscribe.
Leave us a review because those really help.
Share it with your friends, share it with your family, your loved ones.
Heck, share it with your enemies. We don't care. Just get the word out there. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Can we get to it? What am I saying?
So basically, we need to record a quick message telling listeners what we want to do. We got a lot of plans that we want to roll out. We want to upgrade the show a little bit, make it a little bit bigger, better. We want to upgrade our social media presence a little bit, and that we need to raise some funds for this.
Okay, I got it. Here we go. What's good, everybody? It's your girl, Jay Callie, coming to beg and plead with you to send us a little bit of cash, a little bit of dough, a little bit of green, guap, moolah. You know what we're talking about. Please, we need your support to keep the show going, to keep the show amazing. If you would like to send us financial payments, you can send it to us through Cash App. Our Cash App and Venmo have the same handle, WTD Pod. If you are so gracious and you would like to send us monthly, what is it called? Automated payments, you can hit us up on Patreon at www.patreon.com/whatsthedeal. You can send us 5 cents a month, $5 a month, $500 a month. It depends on your pockets, and I am not counting yours. You know what you have, and you know what you can give. We appreciate ya. Thank you.